My husband invited his friend over, but I was the one being watched. It started with a knock on the door, one I wasn't expecting. My husband had told me earlier that his old college friend was in town and would be dropping by for dinner. I didn't think much of it. I'd heard a few stories about this friend before. Nothing remarkable, just the usual college stuff. So I smiled, set an extra plate on the table, and made sure the house looked presentable. But the moment he stepped in, something felt off. He had this way of looking at me, not directly, but long enough to make me notice. At first, I thought I was overthinking it. Maybe he was just awkward, or trying to be polite. But as the night went on, I realized it wasn't in my head. He barely took his eyes off me, whether I was pouring drinks, laughing at something my husband said, or just passing by the table. I felt it. A strange heaviness in the air. My husband, on the other hand, was too caught up in their memories, their inside jokes, their stories from years ago. He didn't see what I saw. Or maybe he didn't want to. I tried to shake it off. I didn't want to cause a scene or embarrass my husband. But then there was that moment. A small thing, really, a comment that didn't sound like a joke. A stare that lingered a second too long. A quiet tension that kept crawling up my spine. I smiled through it all, but inside my thoughts were racing. Why did this man really come over? What did he want? And more importantly, why did I feel like I was being watched, not just seen? What happened next made me question everything. I tried to keep my focus on the conversation, laughing when they laughed, nodding when they spoke about places I'd never been, memories I wasn't a part of. But no matter how much I tried to blend in, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was at the center of something I didn't understand. Every now and then I'd glance toward him, Adil, that was his name, and find his eyes already on me. Not smiling, just watching, observing, like he knew something I didn't. I didn't want to ruin the evening. My husband, Samir, had been so excited all week. He'd even cleaned the guest room himself in case Adil wanted to stay over. That alone should have made me feel at ease. Samir never cleaned anything without being begged. But now, watching them joke and sip their drinks like old times, I started to wonder how well I really knew the man I married. How well did I know his past? Samir kept mentioning how Adil had been through a lot, and changed a lot, since they last met. He didn't explain what that meant exactly, and I didn't push. But now I wish I had. Because Adil didn't just look like someone who had changed. He looked like someone carrying something unspoken. And whatever it was leaking into the room, poisoning the air. Later that night, I caught Adil standing in the hallway, just outside our bedroom. The lights were off. He wasn't doing anything. Just standing there, silent. When he noticed me, he didn't flinch or apologize. He just smiled. Not the kind of smile you give someone you've just met. No, it was something else. Like he recognized me. Like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. I told Samir the next morning. I kept my voice steady, casual even, thinking maybe I was just overreacting. But the way Samir paused, the way his expression changed for just a second before he quickly brushed it off, it told me everything I needed to know. There was something more going on. Something I wasn't being told. And whatever it was, it had already made its way into our home. For the next few days, I told myself I was imagining things. I wanted to believe that. Life is easier when you don't question what's right in front of you. Adil stayed in the guest room, came and went like a polite visitor, helped with dishes, even offered to cook one evening. On the surface, everything seemed fine. But when I was alone, even for a second, I could feel his presence nearby. Like he was waiting for another quiet moment to watch without being watched. Every movement he made felt too careful, too deliberate. Like he was studying the rhythm of our lives. And trying to fit in just enough not to be noticed. One evening, I overheard a hushed conversation between him and Samir in the backyard. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices were low and tense. I couldn't make out the full sentences, just enough to hear phrases like, "She can't know," and "You promised me this would be quick." My stomach dropped. They stopped talking the moment I stepped outside. Samir looked at me like everything was normal, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Adil just nodded, quiet as always. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if my own husband had brought something into our home that he couldn't control anymore. The more I tried to remember little things, glances, words, hesitations, the more they stacked up into a feeling I couldn't ignore. I started locking the bedroom door at night. Not that it would do much, but it gave me a sense of control. Samir didn't even question it. A few days later, I went into the garage to grab some storage boxes and found Adil's duffel bag slightly open. I shouldn't have looked inside. I know that. But something told me I needed to. Tucked between a change of clothes and a notebook was a small old photo, creased, worn around the edges. It was a picture of me. Not recent. Not from social media. It was from years ago, long before I met Samir. My hands went cold. I didn't understand how he had it. I didn't even remember the photo being taken. But what terrified me more was what it meant. This wasn't random. Adil didn't just show up. He came here for me. I didn't say anything about the photo. Not that night. Not the next morning. I needed time to think, to breathe, to make sense of the 1,000 questions running through my head. But deep down I already knew. This wasn't just a visit. It was something planned. Something calculated. And for some reason Samir was in on it. I started pretending. Smiling more. Talking less. Acting like everything was fine. I even laughed at one of Adil's jokes during breakfast, though it made my skin crawl. If they were watching me, I wanted them to believe I didn't know. That I was still in the dark. But inside I was unraveling. Every corner of the house felt colder. Every word shared between them sounded like code. That evening I called my sister, just to hear a familiar voice. I didn't tell her everything. Just hinted that I wasn't feeling safe. Her tone changed instantly. She offered to come over, even stay the night. I told her I'd think about it. As soon as I hung up, I noticed Adil standing at the top of the stairs. I don't know how long he'd been there. He said nothing. Just looked at me and walked away. Later I asked Samir directly, why did Adil have a photo of me from before we met? He froze. It was only for a second, but it was enough. Then he said something that chilled me more than silence ever could. It's not what you think. I wanted to scream. To demand answers. But before I could, the doorbell rang. Samir rushed to get it. I stayed hidden behind the hallway wall, listening. It was a woman's voice. Angry. Desperate. She kept saying Adil's name, asking where he was. Samir tried to calm her, but she pushed past him. When she saw me, her eyes widened. And then she whispered, "You need to get out of here." Everything stopped. Adil appeared behind her, his face pale, almost blank. But his eyes, they weren't watching anymore. They were warning. I stood frozen, heartbeat in my ears, as the woman reached for my hand and whispered again, more urgently this time. "He's not who you think. None of this is what it seems." And in that moment I knew. The truth was closer than ever, terrifying and about to explode. The woman's grip on my hand tightened, her eyes darting toward Adil like she expected him to snap at any second. My legs felt weak, but I let her pull me down the hallway. Samir followed behind us, voice low, begging her to calm down. But she didn't stop. She kept walking until we reached the back door. Then she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "He's done this before." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" I asked, but before she could answer, Adil spoke. "Enough, Zara," he said. "Calm. Too calm. You're scaring her." Zara, that was her name. She stared at him, almost shaking. "She should be scared. You promised you were done. You said no more lies." Samir stood frozen between them. I turned to him, desperate for something, anything that made sense. "Samir, what's going on?" He didn't answer. He looked down like he couldn't bear to meet my eyes. That silence told me more than any confession ever could. Zara looked back at me, her voice lower now. "You don't know why he's here, do you? You think this is about your husband, about some old college friendship. But it's not." She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded paper. It was worn, like it had been opened and closed 100 times. When she handed it to me, my hand shook. It was another photo. But this time it wasn't just me. It was my mother. Younger, smiling, standing outside a bookstore I hadn't seen since childhood. And beside her was Adil. Much younger, maybe in his early 20s. I blinked, my mind trying to catch up. "This can't be real," I whispered. "My mother died when I was a kid. She never knew anyone named Adil." Zara shook her head. "She did. You just weren't old enough to remember. He followed her. Just like he's following you." My entire body turned cold. "Why?" Zara hesitated, as if saying the truth out loud would make it more dangerous. Then finally she said, "Because he thinks you're her." Adil stepped forward now, slowly, his face unreadable. "It's not what you think," he said again, voice low and almost pleading. "I never meant to scare you. I just needed to be sure." I backed away, heart racing, but my feet wouldn't move fast enough. "Be sure of what?" His eyes met mine. "That it's really you." Something inside me cracked. All the glances, the photo, the hallway, the strange tension. None of it was random. Adil hadn't just shown up from the past. He had stayed in it, trapped in something he couldn't let go of. And now he thought I was the one who'd come back. But that wasn't even the worst part. Because in that moment I realized, Samir knew. He had known all along. And he let him in anyway. The room felt smaller, like the walls were inching closer with every heartbeat. I looked at Samir, begging him with my eyes to say something, anything, that would make sense of this nightmare. He finally spoke, voice trembling. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought it would pass. That he just needed closure." "Closure?" I snapped, backing away from both of them. "You let a man who thinks I'm my own dead mother into our home? You let him watch me?" Samir stepped forward. I was scared. He showed up out of nowhere. Told me things about her, about you. Said there were details he couldn't explain. He showed me more photos. Things from your childhood, things I've never seen. Zara turned to Adil, her voice sharp. "You promised me you let her go. That you'd stop this obsession." Adil didn't even flinch. "It's not obsession. It's memory. It's connection." His eyes locked with mine. "I never stopped loving her. And when I saw you, I knew. I could feel it. The way she smiled. The way she stood. It's her. You are her." My skin crawled. "That's impossible." He moved slowly, reaching into his coat. I stepped back in fear, but he only pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, I saw an old silver locket. Inside was a picture of my mother on one side, and the other side was empty. "I saved the other half," he whispered. "For you." I couldn't breathe. My knees buckled, but Zara caught me. "He needs help," she said softly. "Real help. He never let go after your mother left him. He never believed she died. He believed she came back." I stared at the locket, at the emptiness in his eyes, the broken truth behind all of it. Samir took the box from him gently. "It's over, Adil. You need to let her go now." For the first time, Adil's face cracked. He looked lost. "We called for help. Zara stayed until the police arrived." Adil didn't resist. He just kept whispering the same words under his breath. "It was her, it was her." But later that night, as I finally sat alone trying to process everything, I opened the old photo Zara had given me again. There, barely visible in the background, was a little girl, maybe 4 years old. She was holding her mother's hand. She was me. And Adil wasn't looking at my mother in that photo. He was looking at me. The days that followed felt quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. Adil was taken into psychiatric care, and Zara stayed in touch with the authorities to make sure he got the help he needed. I didn't know whether to feel relief or guilt, or a strange mixture of both. Samir tried to explain everything again, but his words couldn't erase the feeling that something inside our marriage had shifted. Trust once cracked doesn't return whole. He admitted he should have told me the truth from the start, that fear had made him freeze. He had been shocked when Adil first showed up with the photo and stories of the past. Samir thought it was just grief talking, that it would fade, but it didn't. And instead of protecting me, he kept the truth locked behind the same fear Adil lived in. I spent hours looking through old boxes and photo albums, trying to find clues, something that might explain how Adil could remember me from so far back. But there was nothing solid. Just that single photo and the memory of a man who clung so tightly to the past. He confused it with the present. Zara and I met for coffee a week later. She told me how she'd met Adil years ago, how he always talked about a love that slipped through his fingers. She never believed it would go this far. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the heart remembers more than it should." Her words stayed with me. I eventually put the locket in a drawer, out of sight but not forgotten. I wasn't sure what it meant, whether it was proof of something bigger, or just the last piece of someone else's heartbreak. But I knew one thing for sure. This was a chapter one needed to close. Samir and I began therapy together, trying to rebuild what had quietly fractured between us. And though healing isn't instant, there's something comforting in choosing to move forward. Together, but with eyes open. I don't know if Adil ever truly saw me, or if he was just reaching for a memory. But I've learned that the past, no matter how deeply it's buried, always finds a way to echo into the present. And sometimes the only way to silence those echoes is to finally listen.